Welcome to Barnaby's podcast, Eye of the Beholder. Barnaby's is one of the leading search engines for art, design, antiques and collectibles from over 3,000 auction houses worldwide. We aim to make the art and auction market more transparent and accessible to everyone, from beginners to collectors and professionals. Today we explore the world of glass blowing and sculpting, from timeless techniques to modern expressions. Join us as we embark on a journey where molten glass is transformed into delicate masterpieces that capture the essence of light and transparency. Welcome, Tim Rawlinson.
Thank you, Pontus. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
How did you first become interested in working with glass as an artistic medium?
I was actually studying architecture as a student in Brighton, and a glass exhibition came to where I was studying, and as soon as I saw these huge glass sculptures, I knew I wanted to transfer courses straight away. So I went off to the arts library, got any books I could find on glass art. Quite funny, actually, the book that I found was Peter Layton Glass Art, and Peter was the guy who found me as a student and asked me to come to the studio when I graduated to study glass. And yeah, I'm still a resident artist here today. And in fact, Peter's now my father-in-law, so it's quite a chance encounter that happened with that one book in the library all those years ago.
So it's quite convenient to go beside the master.
Yeah, indeed. He's been a real inspiration, but also glass art is quite a young thing in terms of glass as a craft, or glass to create functional vessels goes back, hundreds of centuries, goes back a very long time. But as an art form, it's still in its infancy, and Peter was one of the founders of that. He was in America teaching ceramics in the 60s when glass art was just sort of burgeoning, and he saw that. He came back to England and started a studio then in the early 70s, and he's been key in helping people like myself, the next generation, come through. I mean, I'm probably the third generation that he's brought through in glass art. He's certainly a pioneer, but also really determined that the legacy of glass and glass art continues and thrives. So.
But if we go back to you, how do you approach a new project or idea?
So sometimes I'll make, a maquette, a 3D sketch. It's very process-driven, glass blowing. So it can be just about making, start with an idea, lead to a drawing or a sketch, but then ultimately it's about sketching on the blowing iron, about really trying to see if something is achievable in the 3 dimensions. With my work in particular, I go through quite a few different processes. So you have the blown form, but then the final sculpture very often has been heavily worked when it's cold. So I'll cut open glass pieces, and then I'll create highly polished surfaces which act like prisms, reflecting and distorting the light. And for me, to sort of see if these lighting effects will work with inside of the glass, I'll make much smaller pieces and do you can cut glass with a saw, which when I sort of first was exposed to that as a student, it was a real what do you mean you can cut glass with a circular saw? So for me, working on cutting open the glass objects, that sort of informs my ideas for new sculptures. It's just playing with that, and if you've got an idea, does it physically work?
But what about glass is a material that requires technical skills and precision, but how do you balance the technical aspects of working with glass with the creative and expressive elements of your art?
As I said, it is very process driven, so you have to sort of be respectful about maybe the limitations technically of what maybe is achievable or what isn't achievable. Uh, the fact that it's such a sort of versatile material is what is so wonderful creatively. The fact that you've got so many different ways of playing with it, whether it's solid or blown, whether it's cut and polished, or whether it's much more decorative and fine and sort of Venetian goblet kind of style. So creatively, the fact that the versatility of the material is something that means there's so many different applications. If you come to our studio here at London Glassblowing, you'll see so many different ways of using the glass, so many different colors. But I think the color element of glass is something that is amazing for your creativity because A, there's a vast color palette. B, the way you create color in glass is by adding different metal oxides to clear glass. So the fact that two different colors might have a different metal inside them means when they then touch, you'll get a chemical reaction and something entirely new can happen. So you, there's a lot of alchemy that goes with that. But in terms of how you can use that creatively, it just means there's so many variations, so many possibilities, so much exploration. So if you've got intrigue and that desire to explore the material, it certainly offers all of that.
There are several techniques and methods when you're working with the art form, but which do you use to create your art?
So I use a few different processes. I generally start with a blown piece of glass, or what I might call a blank. So rather than say a sculptor who, a stone sculptor, say he gets a block of marble to carve from, I will blow a glass blank to then carve, say with these sort of cutting techniques. So I have a diamond impregnated saw, which means I can sort of slice into the glass, and sometimes that's to expose the inner bubble and the negative space that then creates. Um, and other ways, it's just to make sure if you create a polished surface of glass, unlike every other material, it absorbs light and then reflects it back out. So it's really taking advantage of the fact that it's a transparent material. Light excites glass. There's a unique interaction with it, and the sort of techniques that I try to use are to exploit that interaction. So yeah, I have to start with the blowing to create the starting point or the canvas or the however I want to sort of phrase that. Also, that means through that process I can quite carefully arrange the color, but ultimately the cutting and the polishing creates the form the final form, plus the finish of this refractive, uh, prism-like quality.
But are there any specific challenges or rewards associated with these techniques?
Yeah, glass is it can be, very difficult at times. If firstly it can crack, it can break, and that can be when you blow a piece of glass, you cool it down very slowly in a kiln. Uh, if glass cools too quickly, it will crack. Uh, the glass can crack if it's not been annealed properly, as in cooled down properly, and you cut it. It can crack at the very last stage when you're applying the final polish. Like you sort of go through 5 different stages of polish. So yeah, it certainly can be very difficult in that respect. And you have to you can't skip any of the processes. You can't rush glass. It has very much to be done in its time. The lens for the Hubble telescope because it's obviously a very thick piece of glass, and the thicker the piece of glass, the longer you have to cool it down. I think it was in a kiln cooling down for about 3 years, and it still cracked. So you see, it's a very large investment of time as a material, and yeah, it can still not behave.
But you still
as you wish
try
it
to
to.
push the limits.
Of course.
You don't give up.
No, it can be days maybe you need to leave the studio and go home and start again the next day.
Yeah, do
But
some yoga and meditation.
yeah, or whatever it is you need to sort of, take yourself away from that. But no, I mean, our glass is manufactured in Sweden in terms of the raw material we use. And I make very thick pieces so that they've got a higher optical quality to make these prisms. And when I spoke to the company in Sweden and sort of told them how thick the pieces were I was making and asking for annealing time, so how long I should be cooling down the glass for, they were very good, and they told me what they predicted mathematically, but they had to say glass wasn't designed to do this. It was designed to make drinking vessels and vases. So making very thick pieces of cut sculpture, they don't know how it might behave because it's just not what it's designed for. So we are pushing the material and what it can do, but the fact that you've got something that in its molten state is like honey or golden syrup, and then in its cold state is so sharp and potentially fragile. That's a very unique aspect of working with it.
Glass art often involves collaboration with other artists or artisans. How does the collaboration look like?
This is various forms of collaboration. It's a team sport in many aspects, in that when you're blowing glass, you nearly always have to have one assistant. And then if you're working on very large pieces, there might be a team of 4 or even 5 of you, just because of the physicality. Glass is a very dense material. I work with a very experienced glass blower called James Devereux, who runs a studio in Wiltshire, Devereux and Husky, and I'm using his expertise to help me achieve far more advanced pieces that I would be able to by myself. And in that aspect, it's a collaboration. It's my work, it's my art, it's my designs, but I've been working with him for about 7 years, and that collaboration between us in terms of knowing how to work with each other and what to achieve and what we can achieve is vital to the artwork. And then on other levels, there's collaborative aspects with clients who want specific designs. I've done tables, I've done mirrors, which aren't anything that I would have specifically set out to do as an artist, but being set that then as a brief. And then done some more interactive projects with other artists, like woodworkers, combining materials, and it's creative. It's always such fun. It's sort of, approaching something different with a fresh artistic viewpoint.
But you are still the star, so to speak. It's your name on the pieces, right? Or is it also your artisans?
On my specific work, yes, my name on the artwork. Like I said, it's my design, it's my art, it's my thought process. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but what inspires you as a glass artist?
Various things. The starting point was the way that glass interacted with light and that unique relationship. Just seeing, it could even be just like a window on a wet day, and the way that light then reflects through the raindrops and the different projections of light you get. I've always been fascinated with that. The sort of shadows and that interplay. On other levels, it's things like I think very often I started studying architecture, so the built environment certainly is quite a large impact of my work, and probably a slight geometric aspect then appears in that. And also music. I do think synesthesia is quite a important part of design process. Very often, listening to a piece of music, you sort of go into a different realm of thinking. And very often, that can spark, you know, an idea or something that you start sketching with. And I think that it just manages to sort of free your thoughts. Maybe that's the way of putting it.
Glass is a living material that behaves very differently depending on how you work with it. Is it
Hmm.
difficult to get the result you first imagined?
Um, it's about sort of time and experience. So, well, so I graduated in 2011, and I'm sort of at the point now where I generally know what I will get once I've started. Doesn't mean I don't get surprised still by things, and especially by trying new things. But yeah, having that experience of working with the material and sort of knowing a bit about how it will turn out. The biggest surprise with it is when the glass is hot, the colors appear very different to when they're cold. So you might try a new piece that looks brilliant when it's at 1,000 degrees, and then when it's cooled down to room temperature, really might not be very interesting at all. So you always get that surprise when you sort of open the film door to see if it really does look as good as when it was molten. Um, and yeah, like I said, glass can be a diva. It can act up, it can play up, it can not behave how you'd wish it to. There's certainly never a feeling of being fully in control of the material when it's hot. It is a conversation between you and the glass, and hopefully they agree with your viewpoint.
But glass has a unique relationship with light, as you said, and transparency. But how do you incorporate the qualities of glass, such as translucency and reflectivity, into your artistic vision?
Um, well, by trying to sort of exploit the fact that it's transparent, uh, in a series of my works called Echoes of Light, and I will overlay transparent color. So you could have a blue color and a yellow layer of color, and then the overall piece appears green, but there's no green in the piece, it's just illusion. So I've used it simple ways of, using primary colors to create secondary colors. Um, and glass is unique in that it's a vessel that holds light. So then you will literally get a glow in the skin of the glass of that light. And yeah, you can do it through simple methods of color overlay or far more intricate manners of cutting into the glass and creating polished surfaces. As soon as you do that, like I say, you have prismatic effects in the glass that really exploit the high optical quality of the material.
Glass blowing and sculpting as well is ancient techniques. But how do you balance the traditional aspects of working with glass with pushing the boundaries and exploring new possibilities into your art?
Um, I think I'm quite lucky in the time period of I'm working with glass, in that, like I say, it was sort of pioneers only just in the 60s who, rather than glass being a vessel or a vase or a functional object, it could be considered a sculpture. Um, so with my pieces, there's generally holes that run through. Also, if you try to put water in it to hold flowers, you get quite a bad surprise. Uh, I just think that you have to respect the traditions that it's gone with in the tools that we're using. They've been used for centuries. It's the same tools. It's very simple ways of working with the glass. It's just using it for a non-functional output, using it to create a purely sculptural object. And I think it's more down to the viewer, and it's more down to public that want to purchase glass art. If that is there and the collectors are there, then we'll be allowed to use this incredible material to make, just wondrous objects of curiosity rather than functional things for the house.
Have you noticed any significant shifts in techniques or approaches or the whole perception of glass as an artistic medium the last few years?
In MIT in America, they've been doing 3D printed glass and using computers to do that way. That's something that's brand new, but it's also brand new for a lot of materials. But to see it done in glass is quite exceptional. I think that the fact that you've got things like YouTube, but also how easy it is to travel between studios compared to, say, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, means that techniques which were once very fiercely guarded by studios or countries are now freely sort of shared, generally freely shared amongst people. And it just means that the ability of different artists and makers is so much more ahead of where it once was. That leads to quite, challenging pieces of art being made.
But how important has persons like Dale Chihuly been, for example, for the glass art and the interest of glass art?
Incredibly important. I think interest, like you say, that's the key word. The fact that you've got someone who's really brought glass into the mainstream. I think that most people, if you're asked to name a glass artist, they would say Dale Chihuly. I think he's certainly out there in the commonplace of the art world, and it puts attention on the material. He's also doing, extraordinarily huge chandeliers of many different pieces. Very advanced compositions that he's doing. So just simple glassware you're seeing from Dale. It's things that really push the boundaries, and to have it in so many public sectors, like in all the gardens that he's done. I've seen the different installations he's done at Kew Garden. He's doing that all across the world. It's being kept in America, so it's vitally important, and he's done an amazing amount to put glass art into the sort of public knowledge, public sphere, and public interest.
But what about when you're selling or exhibiting your glass art? Do you do that in a gallery today? Is it accepted as an art form that is, sold by galleries?
Yeah, definitely. You certainly have galleries that are either just focused on glass. So we are here at London Glassblowing. We are a glass gallery. Others are maybe more craft galleries. So it would be ceramics and glass and metalwork and different sort of 3D things. But you're also getting various, top artists using glass as a material to create their works. Recently helped finish some pieces for Mona Hatum. That's going to be in the White Cube here. And Tracy Emin has done various bits, part of a exhibition called Glass Stress. So you're getting very famous artists using glass as the material. But yeah, certainly I predominantly show in glass-focused galleries. But you're having glass appear far more in major galleries as well.
But what about who are the collectors today? Can you see a pattern?
Yeah, I think that there was probably a fear that collectors weren't getting younger, or at least it was the same sort of group of people. But I think that was a fear that people had not just within glass, but amongst most pieces of art, that it's almost a generational thing, and were younger people going to continue in that way? I think now that you have so many sort of digital pieces of art, different ways of that, I think that there's an even more of a desire for something that's real and that is tangible. And when you see it in the flesh, it then does these different optical things that you can't necessarily see just from an image. And I think that that will start to appeal to people more and more, especially as things become even more digitalized. And is it real? Is it not real? I think that the beauty of the actual object will have even more significance.
Is there a particular message or emotion you aim to convey through your work?
Hopefully one that's uplifting, hopefully one that lifts the spirits, but one that also is about contemplation. So everything is quite rushed these days. I mean, I live in London, sort of bombarded by messages and advertising and things that sort of need an instant solution or reaction. So hopefully a bit of slowing down, contemplating what's going on within, and really spending time looking and absorbing what's going on in the artworks, so that spend time with yourself and your own thoughts and your own imagination. So I'd say contemplation and a little bit of shutting off maybe of what's outside and concentrate what's within.
Do you have any dream projects?
I'd love to do something ambitious in scale, like the Tate Turbine Hall, something like that. That'd be certainly be a tremendous thing to take on. I'm very inspired by sort of Hubble telescope imagery and things of that nature. So yeah, maybe an iteration of my own galaxy or universe of different glass pieces. That would certainly be a dream project.
That's good. Hopefully after this podcast they will call you up and say the force is yours.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting. That would be great.
Yeah. Okay, Tim. I think we had half an hour together. It was really interesting. Thanks a lot. And
You're very welcome, Pontus.
I hope to see that exhibition in the future.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
To keep up with the latest trends and receive weekly updates on the art and auction world, subscribe to our newsletter on barnabys.com or read Barnabys magazine online.